Good afternoon, my fellow Americans. I'm Bill Lipinski, and next up in the cleanup spot is my good friend, Ray Hanania.
That's a baseball thing. Bill, you know I'm from the Middle East. We don't throw baseballs. We throw a lot of stuff, but not baseballs.
Yes,
And
I
I
know.
am and I am Ray Hanania here at Two Guys on Politics with former Congressman Bill Lipinski. It's February 8th, 2024. This is season 3, episode 5. And we're talking about the several topics, including the effort by Colorado and other states to prevent Trump from appearing on election ballots, alleging his participation in the January 6th insurrection, quote unquote, the collapse of the border deal and issues of funding for Israel and the Ukraine. And finally, should Nikki Haley leave the race or continue, as Bill points out, as a Donna Quixoti running for election,
Thank
which
you
I
for
think is
letting
a
me
great
clarify.
line. So, Bill, let's start with Colorado. Colorado says Trump shouldn't be on the ballot. Can they really make a state make a decision like that to decide who can be on their ballot for any
Well,
reason?
well, if there was any court in the land that had said that Donald Trump had anything to do with the insurrection in Washington, uh, they might have been able to bar him from the ballot. But no
Right.
one has ever really said that in a court of law. He's never been convicted of that. So as far as I'm concerned, the Colorado Democrats are just doing that for a show. And I wish they'd wake up and realize that all these times that they drag President Trump into the courtroom, his poll numbers go up by 3 or 4 percentages. So they're not
Yeah.
really doing Joe Biden any good. They're not doing other Democrats any good. This is going to be an election in all 50 states. And the people have to decide, who do they want.
Yeah, and I would be even more punitive against Colorado for wasting the taxpayer money for political purposes. I think they should be the ones that are prosecuted for using their political clout to try and delay our democratic process of elections from proceeding the way it should legally. Because as you point out, and I agree, if you're convicted or if you're charged, but definitely if you're convicted, yeah, I think you can be taken off of a ballot. There are restrictions on people that have felony convictions, especially on a national level. But he's never been. I don't recall him being charged outside of the judicial system of the mainstream biased news media, which thinks that they're the new court, the Supreme Court of America, the mainstream media. Other than them, I have not seen any charges. He hasn't been convicted. So Colorado is just playing politics with taxpayer money. They should be fined. They should be forced, to pay for all the time that's been wasted by the Supreme Court, by all the lawyers, to defend our democracy, which they're trying to rip apart. And I don't think it's just Colorado. There are a number of states trying to do the same thing.
Yeah, I think some people in Illinois are trying to knock him off the ballot. Also, why, I don't have the faintest idea.
Well,
Illinois hasn't elected a person running for president, I don't think, since a native son, Ronald Reagan. Okay, so
yeah.
why waste the time? And I understand the Supreme Court. I don't know if they have said it or if they've let it leak out to people that they don't think that they have any jurisdiction in this case.
Right.
I've never heard a Supreme Court say something like that. They normally are willing to take, the jurisdiction over anything that people want them to rule upon. But maybe that just shows how futile this work by the Democrats to knock Trump off the ballot. It's not going to happen. It shouldn't happen. I personally think that he caused those people to attack the
Yeah.
Capitol. But that's my opinion.
Right.
Okay. I
Got to
haven't
prove it in court.
Right, exactly. You have to prove it in court. And I haven't done so. And I don't think anybody else has done so.
Well, I wonder if we were in a court in Ukraine or the Soviet Union, maybe that's what we're pretending, that where we're at, where we don't need to prove anything, we can just do things. Why are they doing it? You raised a good point. Because Trump is leading and Biden is falling. He's faltering. And these are signals, I think, of desperation on the part of Democrats in key states because they know that this is going to come down to electoral votes, and Biden is already, vulnerable to losing several states where they have big Arab and Muslim majority, large community votes, where the votes were really close. And those votes are going to make a difference. I'm not sure he can get 270 electoral votes in this next election in November. And it'll be interesting to see, how this election turns out. But I think, as you point out too, the more they beat up on Trump like this with these irrelevant issues, these obstructionist issues that cost the taxpayers money, the more they empower Trump to do better. They should instead go after the issues, and they're not.
Yeah, absolutely. No question about it. I'm hearing more and more from people who I still stay in contact with in Washington that there really is an effort to get Biden off the ticket and put on Michelle Obama as the presidential candidate.
Now, she'd be a strong candidate.
I said on numerous occasions I didn't see her running because she didn't like politics. She was very unhappy when Barack was running for the state senate. Even she was talking about divorcing him because she just didn't like politics. Of course, once she got elected president of the United States and all the things that go along with that, she probably got to like politics a lot more. And I agree with you, she would be a tough candidate for Trump, very tough candidate for Trump. I still think it's
agree with you.
difficult to get Biden off, but I've never been a person who thought Biden, was really having mental problems. But I'm beginning to change my mind on that.
It's kind of sad because we're both seniors, and we know that it's an unfortunate thing that if your mental capacity gets in the way, it happens to all of us. So far, it hasn't happened to you or me yet, but we're not the president of the United States. I think maybe what they should do is sit down with Biden and say, Joe, you served 2 good terms. Who do you think should take your place? And I bet he would say, we better find somebody, maybe Michelle Obama, get him to nominate her without realizing he only served 1 term. I agree with you. The only way the Democrats get out of this predicament that they put themselves in is to have another Democratic candidate. And by the way, I mentioned before the show, I no longer, as much as I like the call to release all the JFK documents, I no longer can support Robert F. Kennedy. I was a big supporter of his until he started taking such, in my opinion, one-sided stands on the Arab-Israeli conflict without saying, I'm not against the candidates saying they support Israel. I'm not against the candidates saying they denounce Hamas and Arab terrorism or Islamic terrorism. What I'm against is a candidate that won't say he supports the peace process or a 2-state solution. And he won't do that. And to me, that tells me that, maybe this guy is just pandering for votes because he feels desperate. So I'm shifting back over to Donald Trump, who, I don't know if you saw his press conference today.
No, I did that.
Where he was responding to questions about this Colorado challenge. He didn't succumb to the petty questioning and revert to a Rosie O'Donnell type attack.
He didn't?
He didn't. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe he learned.
Well, I doubt that, Ray. I think
Zebras don't change their stripes, right?
No, not Donald Trump, no.
But if he could continue the way he did today, he came across reasoned. He wasn't angry, argumentative, and he wasn't petty. He sounded like a smart person responding to this. And if he can continue that, I think, maybe he can be a better person. So we'll see how long that lasts. I got a lot of time before I have to decide in November anyway, right?
Very, very, very true. Yeah, and by that time, the no labels people might have a write-in candidate for president. So we might support you. Well, I mean, at the rate they're going, they're not going to get on 2 ballots across the states. What is it that your good friend, Mr. Kennedy, had to say about the situation in the Middle East there that you were upset by? What did he say?
He was just basically reading the pro-Israel propaganda that Benjamin Netanyahu has put out, through AIPAC. And, AIPAC is that lobbying group that tends to donate hundreds of millions of dollars into the campaign funds of probably 80% of all the members of Congress, all the members of the U.S. Senate, governors, and elected officials in key races that they want to influence. So it was very one-sided. And I think that the answer to the Middle East is not to go to either extreme, not to go toward Hamas, not to go toward Netanyahu, but to actually push for peace and support a solution that recognizes Israel, that secures Israel's security, its defense, but at the same time gives rights to Muslims and Christians, because there are a lot of Christians, less now than there were before, but there are a lot of Christian Palestinians that are losing their lands, that are their churches were bombed in Gaza and destroyed. So there's a middle ground, but we haven't heard it. It's part of our world today where everything is polarized and there's nobody in the middle that's allowed to talk. So he just went to one side, and I thought that was wrong.
I'm surprised that he would do something like that, because he's usually a very deep thinker. He usually gets himself in trouble because he sort of argues. You ask him a question, and he can argue both sides of the question because he knows so much about it that that's not the standard operations for a politician nowadays. You got to be one way, strong. Don't give up the ship. Take no prisoners.
It may be that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. actually went out and got a COVID vaccination, and it impacted his thinking process, because he did say those COVID vaccinations, are not good for your health. So who knows?
Do you support a two-state solution?
Absolutely.
I do too. No. I think that's the only solution.
Yes, believe me when I tell you that I know that it's portrayed as Israel versus Hamas, but the real problem is Israel's government for the last 20 years has been a far right-wing government. It was one of their disciples, Netanyahu's disciples, who assassinated Yitzhak Rabin in 1995, who was pushing for a solution when they were in the middle of finalizing that, and he died, and it really threw everything up in the air. So today we have Hamas, this terrorist organization on the Palestinian side, deciding things for the Palestinians, and we have Benjamin Netanyahu's government, who for the last 20 years with Ariel Sharon, in my opinion, also a terrorist organization, deciding things for the Israelis. And we've only seen more violence in the last 20 years than we have in the 70 years of this conflict.
Well, if you go back to 1946, 1947, 1948,
yes.
And I support Israel in this war with Hamas. But I have to say 46, 47, 48, who were the terrorists in Palestine?
Former Mayor Rahm Emanuel's father was a member of the Irgun, which was the terrorist organization that attacked villages because they were trying to scare the non-Jews to leave the areas that were designated by the UN for the Jewish state at the time. And it was horrible. But it's all comes down to propaganda, public relations, and who an audience is willing to believe. And the Arabs have done a terrible job of getting their stories out. Even till this day, they don't know how to get their story out. And I think the American people are very sympathetic to truth and justice and fairness. If the Arabs would just get off their dysfunctional pillows and start speaking in a reasoned way to the American people, because the United States decides that conflict. We fund it. We gave them $14.3 billion 2 months ago, and they're trying to give Israel another $17.6 billion now. In addition, and it's in that package that we were going to transition to, the migrants and the Ukraine package.
I was going to say, why don't we talk about that now?
Let's do it.
Chuck Schumer has I think he's the one that put together this legislation in the Senate, and he's given money to Israel, to Ukraine, to Taiwan. Is there anybody else he's given money to?
Anybody that the Democratic Party supports, I'm sure that they're on the payroll too. And migrants, they're trying to do something about migrants, but I don't think it's,
We'll,
you know,
we'll get to the migrants in a minute. Let's stay on this, okay?
but it's
Also,
interesting. Let me interrupt you, Bill, because you made a good point without realizing it. They're not separating the issues. They got migrants, Israel, and Ukraine all lumped in together into one package.
yeah, but not the one that Schumer is talking about. He doesn't have anything in there dealing with the migrants whatsoever. It's simply Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan, and there's money for Palestine too. I don't know exactly how much it is, but to rebuild, now that the tanks that we gave to Israel have
Destroyed.
blown half of the buildings in Palestine, now we can give them monies to rebuild those buildings. It's good for the military institutes here in the country, and also for the construction people. I hope we get a few contracts for Americans when we rebuild, Palestine.
I hope that they remember that. I just saw a news flash over the internet saying that the Democratic-controlled Senate cleared a critical hurdle toward passing a $95 billion national security bill focused at covering Ukraine, Israel, and other allies. So if Israel gets 14 billion of that, let's say 15 billion, there's about 80 billion left for Ukraine and a bunch of other foreign countries that, listen, Bill, I don't know why we keep giving money to all these people who end up slapping us in the face when they feel like it. I'm just, tired of it, but I'm most concerned about Ukraine, not because of Ukraine, but because of the threat from the Soviet Union, the new reemerged neo-Soviet Union, I think we can call it.
I think that's a good name for it, yes. Why we do it? Well, because we're supposed to be the leaders of the free world. And we have to fulfill that position. How much money are we giving to Ukraine?
It doesn't break it down. It says it does break down Israel, which is going to get 17 billion, it looks like, almost 18 billion. It may be about 60 billion that's going to go to Ukraine over a period of like a year.
Is there anything in the legislation that says it has to be monitored for a change rather than just throwing the money at the Ukrainians?
I don't know. And, that would be a good thing, but it should be monitored anytime we give money, regardless of who they are, whether it's Israel or Ukraine,
Well, that's
or
been a big
the
complaint.
Dominican Republic.
That's the big complaint by the Republicans about
Right.
no one's monitored this money. Where is it going? Is it really going? They don't have to buy weapons. We're giving them all the weapons that there are, so they're not buying weapons. What do they use this money for?
Hunter Biden.
Is he still?
I think the implication in the Republican side is they're alluding to the fact that Hunter Biden, and they allege the President Biden, profited over the years before and after he was vice president and before he was president from his dealings with the Ukraine, and they don't want to see that happen again. They want more just upfront disclosure. So that could be what the debate is. But I think you're right. I don't think it's unreasonable to demand, how is this money going to be spent? There should be an accountability and an accounting.
Does it say anything about how many Republican votes there were for that
legislation? It said, and this was just this procedural vote. It was 67 to 32 in the Senate. So you probably had all the Democrats and several of the Republicans, right? Probably about 15 Republicans or so.
Good. Now, does it say what its chances might be in the House if and when it passes the Senate?
It doesn't say. I'd have to read through all this, but the point is there is some movement on that, but it's still early. But they've been debating this for a while now.
Yes, they have. Well, they put it on the shelf because they were trying to pass that money for the border and
right.
Oh
yeah, the border. Isn't that a big issue for Americans? That nobody seems to care about the border or migrants, do they?
Now, let me tell you, So that legislation is going no place.
Yeah.
But if Biden really wanted to do something about the border, he could take all of those things that are in that legislation and say, by executive order, I am passing these items. I am putting them into law. I have the power to do so. I'm doing it. Now, you know, I know, and 1,000 million other people know that he's going to be dragged into court for this. But it will probably take 6-8 months before it can get its way to the Supreme Court, who will have to make the final decision on these orders. In that period of time, there is no reason why those plans cannot be implemented, and we slow down, you know, all these people coming in to this country. It's incredible the number of young Chinese that are coming into this country, and I'm very concerned about them. I think they might be a fifth column for if the Chinese, even though they're an economic basket case at the present time, if they, you know, attack Taiwan and we go to defend Taiwan, I don't want to see all these Japanese immigrants or illegal aliens, Japanese, excuse me, Chinese,
right.
Japanese was the last big war we had to fight.
Right.
Japanese were. Okay, so I'm straight now.
That's okay. You know, that's okay. Listen, you know, we are spread thin all over the world. And, you know, I don't think it's easy to focus on what I think our country has a leadership problem. We're not leading, we're reacting to everything. And Biden, as much as he was probably a great guy in terms of legislation, no LBJ when it came to organizing the legislation in Congress, but you know, he's not that young anymore. And it makes me feel that there are other people that are making the decisions. Anthony Blinken, you know, I think is defining our foreign policy with regard to the Middle East and with the Ukraine. And I don't think it should be that way. We elected a president, and that president should have the capability to be tough and strong. We've talked about this before, but I don't think Russia would have invaded Ukraine if we had had a tough president like Ronald Reagan in charge. Reagan would have thrown the gauntlet down and threatened the Soviets. And I think they would have paused and taken pause and not invaded Ukraine. But I think Putin recognized how weak we were, and he could just steamroll into Ukraine. And he almost did that, taking up 1/6 of the country over a few days. But fortunately, we've kept him from taking over the whole country. But I'm worried that he's going to end up taking over the country because of our polarization in this country and the inability for our leaders to get together to do something.
Well, I think that ever since that terrible withdrawal from Afghanistan, that Biden presided over, our enemies around the world have come to a conclusion that the United States lacks the proper leadership to defend democracy, to defend their own personnel around the world. And I think they have been taking advantage of us. I hate to say that, but I am afraid it's true.
Yeah. And I think that a lot is attributable to the fact that Biden just isn't a very strong image-wise president. He may be smart, but he doesn't come across tough. And I think we need somebody tough. What was that? Was that a Roosevelt wield the big stick? What was that old saying that they used to say?
Let's see, Kerry. Yeah, that was Teddy Roosevelt. Oh,
yes.
Speak softly and carry a big stick.
That's right. Yes. And right now we're speaking softly, and we have a very wussy stick that isn't very strong. And I think people see that, and image, really, perception is, you know, what's hurting us the most. What about the perception? Go ahead.
I was going to say, there's so many things in this podcast that I have said that have been anti-Joe Biden. You know, I stand behind him. I believe what I said about him. By the same token, it hasn't moved me any closer to voting for Trump. Trump is still a despicable character as far as I'm concerned. Now, maybe he'll have a miracle change in his personality and make it possible for me to support him, because he has many, many good ideas that he implemented the first time he was in the presidency. But as you have said on numerous occasions, it's his personality. That's what his big problem is. If he didn't have that terrible personality, he'd win these elections in a walk.
Yeah, and I think part of his problem is his lack of leadership, even in the Middle East. Not being, you could be balanced and still support Israel. You could be balanced and still condemn Hamas terrorism. You could be balanced and prevent the whole destruction of cities and the killing of almost 30,000 people. They're estimating that 70% of those are civilian, 40% of them are children. The numbers are disturbing, and that has cost him a base among Arabs and Muslims who supported him and gave him the edge in 5 states in the last election. I'm not sure he can recover from the fact that they've abandoned him. And he is reaching out, saying all kinds of, throwing breadcrumbs at us. And every time an Arab says, Ray, what do you think of what he's doing? And I said, well, listen, breadcrumbs are not bread. He has not given us bread. He's patronizing us, like we're not important. And I don't think it's going to work. And I think he's going to lose because of that. Now, this is a long-term strategy for Arabs. They certainly don't want Trump back because he wasn't very good to them. But if you take the long-term strategy, they're going to teach the Democratic Party that Arab and Muslims have a place that should be respected. And they're going to point to what they expect will be Biden's loss as an example of their influence. And if the Democrats want them, they're going to have to treat them with more respect. And the irony is about Arab Americans, is they're very conservative. That's the interesting thing about them. They believe in family values. They oppose gay rights. They oppose transgender. They support religion in school. They support religion. These are conservative people who've been pushed out of the conservative movement into the arms of people like Biden, who really don't care about them as much as the conservatives do. So it's a quandary, I think, for Arab voters. So long term, they'll settle with Trump, but they know that he'll only be there for 4 more years, and they'll hope somebody better will come up.
Okay. What's next on the agenda?
Well, somebody better could apparently isn't going to be Nikki Haley, right? What's their status? Donna Quixoti and her Donna Quixoti campaign. Should she leave the race? What do you think?
I think she should leave the race because once again, by her staying in the race and getting beaten in all these states, whether it's a primary or it's a caucus state, by Trump, I think it just builds Trump up more in the eyes of many people. It makes him a stronger candidate for the Republicans. I mean, I understand the poll, the latest poll in South Carolina has her down 15 points. Now, she loses by 15 points in a state where she was the governor of. That cannot be encouraging to her supporters at all. And that cannot, hinder Trump, I don't think, for the future at all. He can say she lost. She used to be governor of the state, and I defeated her here. She had all the political people with her. He could say that. That's not true. Almost all the political people are with him. But, you and I are very much interested in this stuff. Unfortunately, 95% of Americans aren't that interested.
Right.
They want to be alone. They want to live their own life. And unless something directly affects them, they don't want to be bothered with it. I wish we could turn that around, but I don't know how to do that. But
I think
drop out.
I was going to say, to me, the issue is hypocrisy with Nikki Haley. She was a big Trump supporter. Trump appointed her. Wasn't she the United Nations ambassador under Trump? He supported her. He backed her. And he did a Lynn Cheney, to backstab him when it was to her benefit. That's not the kind of politician I want. I would hope we have politicians that stand up for principle, whether I agree with their views or not. They believe in it for the right reasons, not because they think it's going to be selfish. And I think that's what Lynn Cheney did. She put her selfish interests above the country. And I think Nikki Haley has done the same thing. So And I also agree with you, and I think that's a great observation. All she's doing is making Trump look stronger and stronger, keeping him in the news, pushing the idea that, yeah, this guy can win. So a lot of his supporters, they're going to come back out upset with Biden, and they're going to turn out in a big way for Trump. This could be a landslide for him.
Well, we'll see what happens. You mentioned the fact about, or I did, and I think you agree with me that people don't like Trump because of his personality, but they, support a number of his policies.
Yes.
Well, in my time, the president who had the greatest, personal communication
Combination.
with people was Ronald Reagan.
Yes.
I used to have people go and take polls out in front of my office, and I'd list 10 different issues. And the people would disagree with Reagan on 7 or 8 of the issues. And then we would ask them, who are you going to vote for? Oh, Ronald Reagan. Why? Oh, he's a nice guy. I'd like to have him live next door to me. Personality can, cover a multitude of issues that you might agree with a man on.
I agree with you. I think that Biden lacks that today. Trump, I think, has proven he doesn't have it. Although, like I said, at his press conference today on this Colorado lawsuit, trying to keep him off the ballot, he came across really smart. And I don't know if he can keep it up, but if he can keep it up, that's going to really benefit him. That's always been his problem. He just runs into the gutter as fast as he can and fights from the gutter, and it's messy, it's ugly, and it makes us look bad as a country. So,
well, he did this once before where he was very magnanimous after the, I think it was after the Iowa caucus, when he won the Iowa caucus. He was assuming just about everybody was going to drop out. So he spoke well about every single Republican. Then the next day he found out that Nikki Haley wasn't dropping out, and he was back on his attacking her. Well, so we'll see. I wish he would change his spots, but I still doubt it.
All right. I'm Ray Hanania.
I'm Bill Lipinski. And until next time, my fellow Americans, think about what we talked about.
All right. We will see you all next week. Bye-bye, everybody.